We want to turn our attention to a story that has gone coast to coast as a murder investigation has really turned into a shouting match between DAs in New York and Arizona. I do want to put up a live picture right there in New York City as we just passed the 5 o'clock hour. We're talking about a murder investigation at a SoHo hotel and then the arrest that was made in Arizona after several stabbings. We want to be joined right now by Fox 5's Arthur Chian. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And we're going to start with your perspective in New York. What do we know and what's the latest on this story?
Well, Andrew, the jaw-dropping development here is that the prosecutors in Arizona are denying New York's request to have the suspect in this murder case extradited to New York. Now, the way, as you know, extradition works is when a suspect is arrested in another state, the state in which the crime was committed can request that person be sent to them to face justice in that state. It's done for serious crimes, and certainly murder qualifies as a serious crime here. New York made the requests, but the prosecutor there said the reason why she is not granting it is because of the way the Manhattan District Attorney here in New York handles cases involving violent criminals.
Not be agreeing to extradition.
A simple sentence, but a devastating one in the case of the murder at the SoHo 54 Hotel in Lower Manhattan, where 2 weeks ago, the body of 38-year-old Queens resident Denise Oleas-arancibia was found in room 1109. A broken iron believed to be the murder weapon after the medical examiner determined she was killed by blunt force trauma to her head. That was 2 weeks ago. And the good news yesterday was that police in Arizona arrested the suspect in the case, 26-year-old Raad Almansoori. But in an astonishing twist, Arizona officials tonight say they are refusing to extradite Almansoori to New York, saying Manhattan's district attorney, Alvin Bragg, cannot be trusted.
Having observed the treatment of violent criminals in the New York area by the Manhattan DA there, Alvin Bragg, I think it's safer to keep him here and keep him in custody.
The statement comes after Bragg's controversial handling of high-profile incidents, including the release of suspects in the case of migrants assaulting NYPD officers in Times Square, even kicking one in the head. As for Almansoori, Arizona police say he was arrested Sunday after stabbing a female McDonald's employee multiple times. He's accused of stabbing 2 women in the Phoenix area in his most recent violent spree, and in April kidnapped and sexually assaulted a woman in Florida. But if the refusal to extradite Almansoori to New York to face murder charges is rooted in the fear he could walk, some are asking why Florida set him free after he was arrested there for the kidnapping and assault. And a reporter in Arizona today asked officials there why they haven't charged him with more violent offenses.
Why wasn't an attempted homicide charge recommended in the Phoenix case? Records show the victim was stabbed in the neck, temple, and elsewhere, and he allegedly confessed to wanting to kill her.
Now, the police response to that reporter's question is that Almansoori may still yet face more serious charges, but they're still in the process of collecting evidence. As for Alvin Bragg's office here, the Manhattan DA says in a statement that he finds it incredibly, quote, disturbing that the prosecutor in Arizona is playing, quote, political games with a murder investigation. It's not clear what the next steps are, but it's hard to imagine this is over. That's the latest from here in New York. Go back to you, Andrew.
All right, thank you so much. And it's certainly kind of overshadowing some of the victims here, just this controversy there between the 2 DAs. And sir, I'm sure we're going to hear more from our partners in Arizona as well. Arthur Chian, thanks again for your great reporting.
Pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, thank you so much. As we continue on, and of course, we're following that very closely here on Live Now from Fox. And Arthur had just said, talking about Alvin Bragg in the statement, I do want to put up this as he posted this on X on social media, saying it is deeply disturbing that the DA Mitchell is playing political games in a murder investigation in Manhattan. We are serious about New Yorkers' safety, which is why murders are down 24% and shootings down 38% since DA Bragg took office. New York's murder rate is less than half that of Phoenix, Arizona, because of the hard work of the NYPD and all of our law enforcement partners. It is a slap in the face to them and to the victims in our case to refuse to allow us to seek justice and full accountability for the New Yorker's death. So certainly a story that will continue to follow, a controversy there between states on two very different sides of the country. Of course, you were hearing in that story from Arthur Chien, the press conference taking place inside of that Maricopa County office that we were on that earlier today. We also have a longer conversation with the DA Mitchell in Phoenix, Arizona. I want to play that out for you right here now on Live Now from Fox.
Okay. Is that good? Do you want me to do a sound check now on that? Think we're good? Okay. Okay.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and start. You know, you've received some criticism with Charles Ryan and that deal. Can you talk a little bit about step by step, you know, the process behind that decision and why you came ultimately to that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with what the law requires. The law requires that the person intentionally place another in reasonable apprehension of their life or serious injury. And I reviewed all of the body-worn camera. I reviewed the police reports. I also looked at the medical records that were created that night. And what I saw was an individual who was highly intoxicated, who had taken Ambien, who had suffered a recent head injury, who was out of it to the extent that he shot his sink, which is what brought officers to the house. And then in reviewing the body-worn camera, what I saw was a man who had a gun, who regularly would walk around with a gun to patrol his house because of his past employment. And he did not ever intentionally point the gun at the officers. He waved it and it crossed over them, but there was no deliberate act of pointing the gun. And based on that, it did not meet the statutory requirement of intentionally placing another in fear using a gun.
And what would you say to those who claim that this was special treatment? What is your response to that?
You know, everybody that comes before my office is going to get the same treatment, and that is we're going to review the case and we're going to look at the law and then we're going to do the right thing. And in this case, that was the right thing.
Can you explain a little bit more just on this case, how that extradition works? So yesterday I was on the phone with your office and it was kind of explained like the Lori Vallow case, where first he's going to have to face the charges here. Can you just kind of explain that for us?
Well, as you know, in the Lori Vallow case, you know, she was tried up in Idaho and then we extradited her here. But since this individual, Mr. Almansoori, is here, it is our intention to proceed first. He is in custody. He's being held without bond. And so other states that may want to extradite him for charges such as New York can file their extradition paperwork.
Sound of freedom.
Yeah. God bless America. Anyway, other states that have charges that they want to proceed against Mr. Almansoori can file their paperwork, but we're going to proceed her first, and then they can extradite him.
And then yesterday we also spoke to one of his victims out of Florida, and she said she felt like the justice system failed her. Can you just kind of tell me a little bit about your thoughts on how he was able to get away from that case in Florida and then continue his crime spree throughout the next couple states?
You know, I would refer you to Florida to ask those questions. I haven't, you know, taken a deep dive on that as to why they did not file charges right away. So I don't want to comment on that. But what my job here is to make sure that these victims feel like they have received justice here, and we're about doing that.
You mentioned New York as somewhere you didn't feel like, or at least Manhattan, had always taken as tough a stance as they needed to on violent criminals. If this were a murder charge from somewhere else, would you be open to extradition?
Typically, we would go first just because these are serious offenses. If this were less serious offenses, I might be open to it, but I certainly am not open to it given what I've seen coming out of the Manhattan DA's office.
And, you know, obviously he's had run-ins with the law here in Arizona before and was on probation for a while. I know there were some filings that he wasn't fully compliant with a lot of the probation requirements and yet was still released off probation, I think, in 2022. Was everything here done by the book? I mean, or did something go wrong?
I've seen that, and I know that the charges that had been here in the past had been certainly nowhere near the level of seriousness that these are. So I would have to refer you to the probation department as to, you know, why they chose to not revoke him to prison, but let him off probation. I don't know.
Attorney Mitchell, has your office had a chance to review the recommended charges in baby Skylar's case? And can you talk a little bit about what prosecuting a cold case looks like compared to a recent crime?
Sure. We are aware of the case. We have looked at it, and we'll be issuing information on that very soon. Obviously, when you're looking at a cold case, you want to make sure that you have all of the necessary witnesses that are still available. This happened in, I believe, 2005, so we're talking about 19 years ago. We want to make sure that the evidence is still intact and that we have a chain of custody. So those are all things that we have to look at in advance of filing a cold case. It is a different type of prosecution, but we are aware of the case.
Does your office have any updates on Preston Lord at this time?
Yes. So the last time we spoke, we had just sat down with Queen Creek and walked through the entire case. We've now done that with Gilbert PD because obviously they're handling cases that are on the periphery of that and have information. I think we're all on the same page. We have a course of action that we're taking, and hopefully we can wrap this up very soon.
All right, you're just listening in there to the DA in Arizona talk about potentially the reasons why she's not extraditing this individual back to New York. She's talking about the seriousness of some of the charges in Arizona at those stabbings, at those McDonald's, of course. The grisly murder in SoHo, New York. There's a little bit of controversy about extradition as well, potentially will be extradited after these charges continue to go through the system here in Arizona.